What's happening, guys? Cody here with Edge Pro Sharpening Systems. Let's get straight to business today. Pedro from Fort Myers, Florida sent in his Boker Kalashnikov pocket knife to have me take a look at some of the inconsistencies in the factory edge. Pedro's knife has a bevel that's slightly wider on one side than it is on the other. I'm going to show you how I address this problem. First off, there are two main things that can cause a knife to have a wide bevel, skinny bevel like Pedro's. It can mean that the edge is not centered in the blade. In some cases, this is done on purpose, but it's usually done on Japanese cooking knives, and I've also seen it on some other knives too. But that's a whole different topic. In this video, I'll be referring to knives that are intended to be symmetrical, but are not. It can also mean that when the knife was sharpened, that it was sharpened in a fashion where the angles were very inconsistent. This happens a lot more than people realize because most of the time a production knife is being sharpened freehand on a belt sander or some type of electric grinder, which is a really fast way to sharpen a knife, but it's not the most accurate. So the big question is, how do you fix an uneven bevel? And this can be kind of a tough one to tackle because you may just have one of these two problems, but you could have both of these problems happening at the same time. An edge that's sharpened at various angles and off-center in the blade, and that can make it really difficult to know exactly where to begin. So the first thing you have to figure out is where you're going to set your sharpening angle, because under these circumstances, setting your sharpening angle isn't so straightforward. Pedro's knife came from the factory with 28 degrees at the belly of the knife on one side with 26 degrees at the tip, and 23 degrees at the belly on the other side with 25 degrees at the tip. That's 5 degrees difference from the highest spot to the lowest spot on the knife. This was higher than I really wanted to sharpen the knife, but I had to work with what I had, so I aimed for something right down the middle and I set the sharpening angle to 25 degrees. And that's probably the best advice I can give you. The best general advice is to just aim for something right down the middle of the overall average of the knife. So the next thing you want to do is sharpen your knife in a regular fashion using either your 220 or 400 grit stone until you raise a burr. Now when I say a regular fashion, I mean you want to make your best attempt to remove an equal amount of metal from each side of the blade. If you want to count how many strokes you make on each side, that's perfectly fine. For example, make 10 strokes with your stone on one side, then turn the knife over and make 10 strokes on the opposite side. Turn the knife back over and continue this process until you raise a burr. The reason we're not doing anything too out of the ordinary on this first sharpening sequence is because the purpose of this first sharpening sequence is to give us a true and accurate reading of what's going on at the edge of the knife. Was it the inconsistent angles that caused the bevel to be wide and skinny, or was the edge off center? So in the first sharpening sequence, we are going to eliminate the first variable. You might find out that just by simply sharpening your knife at a consistent angle with your Edge Pro, that just that alone was enough to make the edge symmetrical. If that's the case, just go ahead and progress through the rest of your finer stones, removing an equal amount of metal from each side of the blade, and you're done. If the bevel is still wider on one side than it is the other, then that means that the edge is off center in the blade. But now you can start taking corrective steps to make the edge symmetrical. And that brings me to our third and final step. Now that you have a bevel cut into your knife at a consistent angle and you've raised a burr, take one last look at your knife and make sure you identify clearly which side has the skinnier bevel. As you progress through the rest of your stones, you're now going to favor the side with the skinnier bevel and sharpen the skinny bevel at a 2-to-1 ratio. If you take 10 strokes on the side with the skinny bevel, you're going to turn around and make 5 strokes on the side with the wider bevel. By doing this, you will slowly move the edge back to the center of the knife and even out your bevels without overcorrecting the problem and removing more metal than is necessary. Once the bevel is an equal width on both sides of the blade and you've achieved equilibrium, you'll want to go back to sharpening each side using a balanced number of stone strokes. If the original problems that caused your bevel to be all over the place were really drastic, it might be a good idea to keep progressing through your finer stones, finish the knife, and temporarily live with a bevel that's wider on one side than the other, and gradually move it back to the center of the knife over time using the 2-to-1 ratio method when you resharpen the knife. That way you don't have to remove a ton of metal from your knife all in one sharpening. But it'll be your knife, and that'll be a judgment call that you're going to have to make. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you found this video to be helpful. Make sure you're subscribed so you can see future sharpening videos, and stay tuned because we'll be talking again very soon.